Alright guys, let's go ahead and move on. So as we mentioned, we want to add some Foley bits to our avatar here, to our female warrior princess, and like we said, she's wearing leather, supposedly with some buckles and some metal elements to her armor, which would supposedly clink around, and the leather would stretch and it would make sounds too while she's running. This would add a bit of depth and realism to the footsteps, so let's go ahead and create some leather and metal jingly bit assets that we can add to our footsteps. Now, I'm going to go ahead and use a free program called Audacity that is available free for download. It's a great little audio editor, and I'm going to go ahead and use my Foley assets, which I prepared already. And I'm going to go ahead and start with the leather bits. Now, I'm starting by creating the assets here as opposed to having them created already, because I kind of want you to see the process that I go through to select good assets for implementation. So I have a leather file here that I downloaded from freesound.org. And let's go ahead and take a listen to this. All right, so this is just a recording of someone moving around a leather jacket or some pieces of leather to get some good creaky leather sounds there. And the first thing I'm going to do is go up here to tracks and, well, first I'm going to expand this. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to go up here to tracks, and I'm going to do stereo track to mono since we don't need this to be a stereo file. Then I'm going to select the entire sound file here, and I'm going to go to Effect and Amplify. And when I select Effect and Amplify, it comes up with a automatic amplification of 18 dB. But I'm just going to move that to say 16 dB, and hit OK. All right, so here we have a little bit more to work with. Now, what I want are just very, very small snippets of this that are going to play that I can randomize with every single footstep. So I'm gonna select different parts here that may or may not be good for my purposes in the entire sound file. So watch as I kind of click around and I audition some of these pieces for to see if they sound right for me. So let's start here. So that's a good one. I'm going to go ahead and select that one by clicking and dragging, and then I'm going to hit Control C to copy, and I'm going to paste it in the empty space down here. Now I want 3 files, and that is the base minimum. Anytime that you're going to randomize audio assets, you want at least 3 different versions of what you're looking for. So that's a good subtle one. I'm going to pick that. And then there we go. All right. So I have my 3. And now that I have my 3, again, if this were a project that I was working on for an actual client and not an example for a video, I would probably choose more. So I'm going to X out of this main file, and I'm going to zoom in to work with these 3 files that I've selected. Now, it's good practice to fade in the beginnings of your file and fade out the ends of your file, because as you can see here, if I expand this file completely and if I zoom in, we can see, for example, here at the end, that the audio file, the waveform, does not end at 0. And what this could do is create clicks and pops in your audio. So I'm going to select the end of this file by clicking and dragging like this, and going to Effect and choosing Fade Out. And as you can see, that's going to bring the end of the waveform into the 0 position. I'm going to do the same thing for the beginning of the wave file, because we can't really tell, and it's just good practice to make sure that it starts at 0 as well. And I'm going to choose Effect after I've highlighted it and Fade In. And there we go. Now we're sure it starts at 0. Now I'm going to do this to my other two files as well. So click the beginning of this file, Effect, Fade In, and same with this one, Effect, Fade In, and then here at the end, Effect, Fade Out, and here, Effect, Fade Out. All right, now these three files are ready for export. So we can solo them and audition them. Let's make sure I start at the beginning by pressing the skip to start. All right, that's that one. I can choose this one. And I can solo my third file. All right, so those all sound good. I'm ready to export them. I'm going to go to File, Export Multiple. And here in the folder, I'm going to choose my desktop as the location I want to export these files to. My format I'm going to keep as WAV 16-bit. And split the files based on the tracks. So for each of these tracks, it's going to create a new file. And then under our naming, how we're going to name our files, we have using label or track name, but they're all of the tracks are named leather, so that's not going to help us very much. Numbering before the label or track name, so what it'll do is it'll add a number before the name, but I prefer our third option, which is a numbering after a file name prefix. So it's going to take the prefix that we define here, and it's going to add a number after it. Now, file name prefix is leather. It grabbed that from the name of the tracks, and that sounds good. So it's gonna call it leather 1, leather 2, leather 3, and that's a good naming convention for our assets. So once that's defined, I'm going to go ahead and choose export. And you can see here that on our desktop it is exported 3 files, leather 1, 2, and 3. All right, so let's go to our desktop, and here they are, leather 1, 2, and 3. So under my audio assets, I'm going to go into Foley, and I have a leather folder here, and I'm going to create a new folder and call it, let's call it edited. And I'm going to move my 3 leather files here into the edited folder. Now we have our leather assets, but we still need our chainmail assets. So let's go through the same process we did with our leather file with our chainmail file. All right, so let's get rid of these leather tracks, and I'm going to click and drag my chainmail file into Audacity. And I don't really need to amplify this as it's already pretty loud, but I do need to go to tracks and change it to a mono track by selecting, let's see here, tracks, stereo track to mono. Let's select it. There we go, stereo track to mono. All right, so let's go ahead and zoom in, and then not too much there, Audacity. And let's go ahead and try and see if we could find some good candidates for metal assets. I like that. There, we'll select that one. That's good. And something a little more subdued, maybe. Something like that. Something kind of quieter a little bit. All right, so we have our 3 assets. Let's get rid of our main file. Let's zoom in. And if you remember from last time, we want to fade the beginnings in and the beginnings of our files in and the ends out. So choose the beginning of the file, effect, fade in, effect, fade in, and effect, fade in. And the ends of our file, also effect, fade out. And you don't even need to select that large of an area. I've been selecting a pretty large area. But remember, we're just trying to get the ends of the file to be at 0. effect fade out. All right, let's audition each of these by soloing them, making sure that we are at 0, the playhead's at 0. All right, sounds good. Sounds good. All right, so again, let's go to File, Export Multiple. Again, we're saving them to our desktop, 16-bit WAV files, split the files based on the tracks, yes, and name the files after file name prefix chainmail. Just go ahead and add a number to chainmail. So hit export, and we have chainmail 1, 2, and 3. And if we go to our desktop, we have chainmail 1, 2, and 3. Go into our audio assets under Foley, chainmail, add a new folder, and we're going to call it edited, just like we did with our leather folder, and move our edited chainmail assets to this folder. Voila. All right, now we have the assets that we want to add to our footsteps in Wise. So in the next video, we're going to go ahead and go into Wise and set up our Foley sounds on our footstep sounds.